Welcome back to the Eric Krown Crypto channel. Wishing you a happy early start to this nice Monday as we all wake up for this new week. We got some new opportunities, kind of. I mean, Bitcoin's still in basically a line chart going from left to right, but there are a few catalysts this week, of which I do believe that we are going to be seeing some actual movements, not just in the short-term and medium-term time frame ranges, but probably in the higher-term time frame ranges as well. Anyways, with that in mind, I wanted to once again subtly shill my Instagram. I've been posting a lot of Bitcoin travel and trading related content there. There is a link in the description below, and then also Bybit still has their promotion going on, which is also in the description or link, or you know where it is. You probably know where it is. Anyways, let's just get into it right now. So I want this to be a continuation of the analysis that we were looking at on the short-term timeframes, then related to the higher-term timeframes that we started on about Thursday, Friday, essentially. And first and foremost, I wanted to start off yet again with the underlying market dynamics here on the Krown traded application, which we can first and foremost reference the global open interest. It did spike up to certainly not extreme highs, but you can imagine sort of a regression coming in from basically November of last year. So literally 1 year ago, that was when Bitcoin was hitting pretty much its all-time highs at $69,000. That is also in alignment with what we did see in the March highs when Bitcoin put in that nice bull trap at around $45,000 or so. And then you can also imagine that we're seeing the same sort of region hit on these highs that we have seen in early October thus far. So I did think that that was rather interesting because all of the spikes to the upside that we have seen in open interest for the past year to actually a year and a half now have really been met with some pretty severe downside price action. On top of that, if I remove my little rat face over here, you can see in the bottom left-hand corner, the leverage ratio also hitting all-time highs, and all of the all-time highs that it has hit in the past year and a half as well have been met with downside price action. Does that mean that this relationship would always be exactly that? No, of course not. There are going to be times where the leverage ratio or open interest will be high, and then you will see an upside squeeze. But, you know, when you do have a bit of a trend, well, the trend can be your friend, of course. So with that in mind, let's actually go into the actual price action charts. I'm going to put back on the old rat face here. Hello, sirs and zers and all sorts of people that we have watching right now, and of which there's probably not too many. I mean, it's been pretty fucking boring, honestly, for the past, realistically, for all of summer. Anyways, so yes, I wanted to first and foremost recap Friday. That was when we were observing hidden bearish divergence on the 6-hour time frame right here, and then also, and I'd even say a little bit more importantly, breaking below the trap region, which was 19,450 right here. Do I still have it on my charts? Yeah, I do. Hey, there we go. 382 Fibonacci retracement on that one was kind of what I was looking at. Anyways, that was beginning a move back down somewhere below $19,000. We did get a move below $19,000 on over the weekend on spot price action, but not on CME, dare I say, yet. So I am actually still looking for that move as relevant, if you will. In this case, the only way that I'd essentially invalidate that would be with a 4-hour closure back above last week's breakdown point, again at 19,450. Again, on a closing basis, if Bitcoin can do that, then I suppose I would put that idea into the loser category and be looking for a return back up to probably last week's high and probably even beyond. I mean, if Bitcoin even just trades a tick above last week's high, which was just under $20,000 on CME, I'd be looking for another extension short term. Again, this is only short term right now, all the way up to about 20,500, which was the week prior's high, something like that, and then we come back to after that. Once if Bitcoin were to actually surpass that high and close above there, especially on a medium, preferably a higher term time frame in this case, that's at the point where we actually can start to speak about a heavier reversal with likely another $1,000, maybe even more in the cards there, to follow. But until then, I am still biased a little bit more towards a short-term downside continuation move here. Anywhere below $19,000 is fair game. I know that that's not too helpful because that obviously leaves a lot, here essentially, but I'd still have the same breakdown criteria as before on the higher term timeframes, which is below 18,100 on a higher term timeframe closing basis, or just a wick below last week's low on CME, which is 17,810. One of those two would do it for me, and at that point we talk about big bad moves to the downside, and of course that's still in alignment with the current trend. So the trend is your friend as long as you just let it be, and well, until that trend ends, I would still let it be my friend in this case. So ultimately, anywhere down around here is completely fair game. Again, 18,500 all the way up to like 18,900 essentially. I do understand that that's not too helpful, but unfortunately that's kind of just where we're at right now, or at least where I'm at right now. So now what we can do is we can go reference some of our indicators. So one of the things that does suggest that we're unlikely to see a higher term time frame break to the downside just yet is the 4-hour BBWP going back into a contraction phase right here. So this represents volatility, and with it going back to a contraction phase, I'm not really looking for like a range resolution on a medium or especially a higher term time frame. Again, we can test range highs, we can test range lows within that, but I don't think that we're actually set up to essentially break it like in the extremely short term. This is obviously going to change even in like 24 hours. So by tomorrow, that whole notion goes out the wayside, and especially the day after that as well. But for right now, in the short term, if we're literally just talking about the short term, no, I do think it's just a range move. So kind of the same thing as what I had on the LARP lines over here. Was it over here? Where's my damn LARP lines? Hey, I think I deleted them. Oh, there they are, something like this, which funnily enough is still kind of working out. Yeah, there's some deviations there, but if you put it on a line chart, it's basically the same shit. Yeah, funny how that works out. It's not really intended to be like a one-to-one representation, but I do find it amusing when that does sometimes happen. So basically the same thing over here in the short term. But here's the thing. Bitcoin is gearing up for a pretty high term time frame move. The reason why I say that is because all of the higher term time frames are in alignment with each other. But before we get to that, I do need to finish with the lower term time frames here. And let's just go reference stochastic momentum, starting off with do we want to start with 12-hour? Do we want to start with 6-hour? I think we'll start off with the 6-hour and just talk about the medium term time frames. 6-hour time frame will actually be showing downside momentum as long as Bitcoin's below 19,800 on a closing basis, again for CME. The 4-hour will be showing downside momentum as long as Bitcoin's below 19,650, again on CME closing basis. 3-hour also showing downside momentum below 19,650, so about the same as the 4-hour. And then the hourly should be up, indeed it is, as long as Bitcoin's above 19,100. So a little bit of ebb and flow there. We did already kind of see a little bit of a bounce attempt here in the very short term on Bitcoin. Could continue a little bit more, definitely possible, but just be aware of where those pivots are for the short term. As long as Bitcoin's below, especially the 6 and the 4-hour ones, maybe a short term try to the upside, but ultimately I'd be looking for it to hold the range and try for another move to the downside. Probably somewhere around where spot landed over the past weekend. Anyways, all of this is secondary to the higher term timeframes, because the higher term timeframes, as we did allude to earlier, are all kind of playing in concert here. When we go and reference daily volatility, which is represented by this indicator, the BBWP, you can see that it has been basing off of extreme lows since late September. These sort of periods of extreme low volatility behavior really have only been observed, a few times, like to this effect in CME. Keep in mind, CME has only been trading for like 4 to 5 years now. But the last time we saw it a little bit lower for longer, I should say, was actually in June, July of 2020, before the humongous breakout to the upside for Bitcoin. The time before that, where we saw it this low for this long was actually in October to November of 2018, which precipitated a major downside move, about a 50% downside move actually. So, we're looking at likely a historic move coming up here. If it comes to the upside, probably somewhere around $30,000, with obviously stops along the way. It's going to take its time, I imagine. And when it comes to the downside, probably looking, at least around the mid-teens, maybe even the deep teens. So again, what can we actually get to, or what can we actually use to kind of generate some areas of interest? Well, we'll get to that in a bit. But while we're on the daily, it should also be known that it's not just the daily. Well, it is also the 12-hour, but that is secondary to the 2-day time frame, which is 2 dailies basically, which is also on extreme lows. And then the 5-day, which is also coming off of basically extreme lows. I think it's a little bit more relevant on spot price action. You can see that it's really down around these same sort of regions here that things have really borne like major moves upon for the past 6 years especially. Anyways, going back on over here to CME, when we see all higher term timeframes kind of in unison with each other, showing extreme lows on volatility metrics, we're likely going to be looking at a macro move. Very, very likely to be looking at a macro move. So this is why I've really been holding off on saying that, hey, Bitcoin's going to break out or break down like to these tremendous numbers in the short term. I am starting to think that this is like relevant now, this week, perhaps, basically into the end of October. So we're in the back half of October now. Yeah, there's about 2 weeks left to go. I do think that we're going to see resolution somewhere in these next 2 weeks, and you're going to see the daily, 2-day, 5-day, weekly basically start to explode on volatility, which those are the face melting moves, both to the upside and the downside, that we've all seen in Bitcoin's history. Anyways, moving on to the last portion of this analysis, back on over here, it's everyone's favorite fucking chart because you've seen it a million goddamn times. You probably repeat it better than me at this point. But in this case, this is the volatility versus stochastic momentum signature. I just want to follow up on it for today. I won't do the 2-day or the 5-day today because I don't think they're closing, I don't think they're closing today. Or if they are, it's just the daily is just more relevant right now. It's more fun to follow as well because it's every day. Anyways, anytime that we have seen daily BBWP, again, representing volatility at extreme lows, the expansion phase from these extreme lows over the full history of about 4 to 5 years on CME has led to an average move of 24.25% almost, done over the course of about 2.5 weeks on average. And the stochastic also has been correct in getting that direction for volatility expansion 83.33% of the time, which is pretty fucking good, but it's still not 100%. So I do see some comments sometimes where it's like, hey, what the fuck, man? Why didn't go in the right direction? It's like, there is no right direction. It's just probabilities and statistics. That's all that we can really do, or at least all that I can do. I mean, I'm sure other people have other methods out there, obviously. But in this case, the reason why I bring it up is because while volatility is very, very low, we can go reference the direction of the stochastic also to kind of get a bias on where this direction is likely to land upon volatility expansion, which has not happened just yet, which is the confirming factor. And until we get that, this is actually kind of more or less irrelevant, but it is fun to track nonetheless and know where the pivots are. As of right now, for today's daily closure for CME, need to see it close below 19,100 to remain with downside pressure on price action. If that occurs, then, well, it's still just basically bearish, which obviously the trend is down, so it is naturally bearish. But what would confirm the signal? Again, daily BBWP, 2 things minimum. Daily BBWP needs to have a positive slope above the moving average, and then also above the critical zone, which are defined as about 10 percentile. So if we get those 2 things and then the stochastic momentum direction, that's at the point where it's like, okay, we have a highly probable move here. We can go reference the average moves, both the first standard deviation and then the average move itself, to kind of get a range of areas of interest. In this case, if we're looking to the downside right now, that would put Bitcoin, in the lower end about 15% down, which puts Bitcoin about $16,500. 24% puts Bitcoin at about 14.5, and 33 puts Bitcoin about 12.5 or so. So those would be areas of interest to the downside. To the upside, I think it's like 21.5. About 21.5. Then you got 23.5, and then you got $25,000. So, again, it's going to be a long waiting game until this actually does occur. But, waiting for that first sort of move, at least in my experience, is kind of worth it, just because when you are looking at a greater percentage move, can you give up, 5% of on the lower end, a 50% move? Well, that's still pretty profitable in my book. Of course, it's personal preference, but just kind of a reminder that patience, especially in these regions, can really pay off quite a fair bit. At least that was my big lesson from 2018, where I was a little bit too early to the trade in shorting the breakdown, which eventually did break down, which was great, or great for me, I suppose, as self-aggrandizing as that sounds. But ultimately, I could have had more money in my pocket had I not front ran my own, my own trading plan, because it's been like a year at 6,000 basically. Anyways, that's going to do it for today's video. I hope that this was in some way helpful. Again, short-term time frame pivots, 19,450. On a 4-hour closing basis on CME, versus, there's not really a pivot to the downside. It's just, it just is what it is. And then the big focus is on the higher term timeframes here as well. Until that, I think that we're probably gonna be waiting until probably at least like Wednesday. Figured today's probably gonna be boring, but other than that, I want to be wishing you the best as always. Take care, much love, and see you hopefully soon.